lecture with us, pastors who are currently illnesses. Just keep them in our prayers at all times. Hare Krishna.
Yes, indeed. And specifically, His Holiness Parthasarathi Maharaj. I know that some of you know him personally, and actually some of you are initiated by him personally. So the latest we heard just, an hour or two ago or something, was that his operation this morning was successful and he's resting in his room in the, the Parklands? Parklands, I think, yeah. Hospital in just near Overport there, Durban. So anyway, devotees and friends, how nice to be here with you. It really is. No, really, it's very nice to be here with you, and we hope all is well with everyone, as much as it's possible in this world, which is always full of some challenge or other. So, here we are, and what we'll do now, we will read a verse from Srimad Bhagavatam. Very, very sacred scripture and just very beautiful, very amazing, and incredibly instructive Vedic literature. So we'll read a verse and say a few words about that, and then if anyone has any questions or comments, we can take them. And even, I don't know if I should have thought of it earlier, but we could pass around a sheet of paper and a pen or something, a notebook or something, and people could write down if there's anything they'd like to say, because I know to stick your hand up and speak in front of everybody can be a little of a daunting thing. So to be anonymous, just write something down, it's a lot easier. So as we go, we'll pass it around, and if you've got a question, you can write it down, look at them shortly. So what we'll do though, we'll read a verse from Sri First Canto, chapter 19, which is titled The Appearance of Shukadev Goswami, and it's verse 24. So I'll read it, but just before I do, just please repeat after me. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
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 Very good. So, let us read this verse here. First Canto, chapter 19, verse 24. Tataschava prichyam imam viprichche Vishrabhya vipra iti krityatayam Sarvatmana mriya manais chakrityam Shudham cha tatram rishatabhiyukta. Translation. O trustworthy Brahmins, I now ask you about my immediate duty. Please, after proper deliberation, tell me of the unalloyed duty of everyone in all circumstances, and specifically of those who are just. The first question is, what is the duty of everyone in all circumstances? And the second question is, what is the specific duty of one who is to die very shortly? Out of the two, the question relating to the dying man is most important, because everyone is a dying man or woman, either very shortly or after 100 years. The duration of life is immaterial, but the duty of a dying man is very important. Maharaj Pariksha placed these two questions before Shukadev Goswami also on his arrival. And practically the whole of the Srimad Bhagavatam, beginning from the second canto up to the last 12th canto, deals with these two questions. The conclusion arrived at thereof is that devotional service of the Lord, Sri Krishna, as it is confirmed by the Lord himself in the last phases of the Bhagavad Gita, is the last word in relation to everyone's permanent duty in life. Maharaj Parikshit was already aware of this fact, but he wanted the great sages assembled there to unanimously give their verdict on his conviction, so that he might be able to go on with his confirmed duty without controversy. He has especially mentioned the word shuddha, or perfectly correct. For transcendental realization or self-realization, many processes are recommended by various classes of philosophers. Some of them are first-class methods, and some of them are second or third-class methods. The first-class method demands that one give up all other methods and surrender unto the lotus feet of the Lord, and thus be saved from all sins and their reactions. Let me read the verse again. Tataschava prichyam imam viprichche vishrabhya vipra iti krityatayam sarvatmanam richa manaischakrityam shudham cha tatram rishatabhiyukta. O trustworthy Brahmins, I now ask about my immediate duty. Please, after proper deliberation, tell me of the unalloyed duty of everyone in all circumstances, and specifically of those who are just about to die. Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prestaya Bhutale Shrimati Bhakti Vedanta Swaminiti Namane Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pracharne Nirvisheksha Shunyavadi Pastyatya Deshatarne Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadha Shivas Adi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Vanchka Tribhyaschcha Kripa Sindhu Vyaevacha Paritana Bhavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha. Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha. We offer our respects to everyone here, the Vaishnavas or devotees of the Lord. Now, devotees and friends, well, the questions sheet and pen is moving around, and you know, the thing is, they told me, you've heard of them, right? They get talked about quite a bit. So, but they told me that the devotees in Alberton and surrounding areas are very intelligent and thoughtful, really. And therefore, they have many questions, and because they're very interested in these things and how all these things work and so on, which is just extremely important. So go ahead, don't feel embarrassed. You can write out a question, you don't need to put your name there. And you know, there's a saying, the only silly question is the one that is not asked, they say. Yeah. And that's true, actually, generally. So, you know, if it's something which you're interested in, it means something to you, feel free to write it down, and shortly we'll have a look at those questions or comments also, for that matter. Now, one thing you may not be aware of, I'm not sure if you are or not, but there is a subject, a topic for our little talk now, this afternoon. And the topic is the purpose of life. That's quite a topic, isn't it? People have written books about it. Let us see what we can say in the next some number of minutes or so. But it's really important. Actually, it's extremely important. The purpose of life is to cure the sick people. And if you're a lawyer, you can say the purpose of your life is to get people out of trouble, or something like that. If you're an accountant, you get the idea, right? There are ways that's one way of looking at it. It depends on what you are. It really does. It depends on what you are. So, but there are different levels, you could say, of that subject. You know, because if you're a doctor, for argument's sake, then it's just very likely you have a family. So along with the purpose of your life being to cure the sick people, another purpose is to provide for your family, like that. So, but if we want to really get down, you know, as they say, to drill down into the subject matter, into the question, into the subject of the purpose of life, then we have to really understand who we are and what we are in the most basic sort of fundamental sense, you could say, or foundational sense. Because, you know, if you're a doctor or something like that, if you're a student, if you're something like that, that sort of identity changes. It's not fixed. Because you were a school child before, and before that you were just a little child. Then you became a school child, then you became a university student, then you became a doctor, and then after some number of years you'll retire, and then you'll no longer be a doctor. You'll be just a retired person. I happened to, would you believe, I don't know if I should even tell you this, but I happened to just tune in for a few minutes to Trevor Noah. Just about the most famous South African these days. Not long ago at all, he was interviewing Barack Obama. Yeah, Barack Obama. And he said to Barack Obama, they were actually just joking, but it was interesting. He said to Barack Obama, how should I address you? And Barack Obama said, just call me Mr. President. But he's not the president any longer. It was a little while ago. So, you know, people to these different identities. Even when a doctor retires, doctor still, Dr. such. But he's not a doctor any longer. You could say his identity in that sense has changed. So what is really the most fundamental part, foundational and actually never changing part of what we are in essence? Well, that's discussed in Srimad Bhagavatam. It's discussed in a very pointed way in Bhagavad Gita. And just briefly, in essence, the way Lord Krishna describes us in Bhagavad Gita is we are all eternal spiritual persons. Yes. Of course, currently, we have our material bodies which are temporary, and they're changing, and they have been changing. I see our young man here. What's your age, young man? That's you. Yeah. No. 8. Okay. Young man, anyway. In the middle somewhere. But he's 8. And then some of the young ladies up here are they're older than 8, but they're still fairly young. And then, you know, when I do programs with gatherings, when I started in Krishna consciousness, which was almost 50 years ago, I was often the youngest person. Now, 50 years later, I'm often the oldest person, but I think I'm not the oldest person today. Yes. So, but you know, young person, middle-aged, old, these are all temporary designations also. So what is the essence of us? That is, as we mentioned, Krishna says, we're all eternal spiritual persons, but we're living within these temporary material bodies, which may be male or female, young or old, whatever nationality or race or that sort of thing. But they're all temporary. Just consider this. In the Bhagavatam, later on, this is towards the end of the first canto, in fact it's almost right at the very end, is the story of someone called Puranjan, who was a king. Puranjan, King Puranjan. And King Puranjan had a very nice wife, as I'm sure so many of you gentlemen do, or all of you gentlemen. very just so extremely nice in all respects. And as a result, this King Puranjan, he became deeply attached to his wife. He could barely spend 5 minutes away from her.
Sure.
And then he had to check in, and yeah, so it was just, and this is, for many years, of course. So it ended up like that, but the main thing he was focused on in his life was his wife. And you know what Krishna says in Bhagavad Gita about that sort of thing. Yam yam vapi smaran bhavam tyajatyeva kalevaram. That whatever you think of at the time of death, you will attain to that state without fail, Krishna says. Yeah. So, whatever state of being you remember at the time of death, what is that going to be? Is it just going to be just something which comes to your mind out of nowhere? No, it's going to be whatever was the main thing you are focused on during the course of your life. And in the case of Puranjan, it was his wife. When he passed away, he was just fixated on her. So take a guess what happened to him in his next life, because the next life is described in detail also. He became, devotees and friends, listen to this, he became Puranjani, a woman. Yeah, Puranjani. Because generally, not always, but generally in Sanskrit, when a word like describing a person or something which is living ends in E, means this is a female. Yeah. And actually Puranjan, strictly speaking, his name was Puranjana in Sanskrit, which means masculine. So yes, so he became a woman. Or not exactly he became a woman, but he got the body, a female body. Right. Anyway, it's a long story, but that, is an important point here. It's a very important point. So we all have had many births and deaths. In this world, Krishna says in Bhagavad Gita, Bahuni me vyatitani janmani tava charjuna. He says, many, many births have you and I taken together in this world. I can remember all of them, but you cannot, Krishna tells Arjuna. Right, so here's an interesting question. I don't know if you ever thought of this before, that in your previous lifetime, you had a certain type of body. It may well have been a body of the opposite sex, actually, because, it's not just Puranjan who's really just absorbed in thinking of his spouse, but it's not uncommon amongst people that the main thing, person, thing, whatever they're focused on is their spouse. It's not unusual. So, yes, and therefore at the time of death, a person doesn't just Jani, the female. Anyway, it's sort of a rhetorical question. But the answer is neither, because he's an eternal spiritual person. And he just happened to be in the body of Paranjan, a male body of a king. And then he just happened, due to circumstances and how he became conditioned, he got a female body in the next lifetime. But neither is the real person. The real person is the eternal person. And even we, just consider this point. The majority of us are at least adults. Some of us are quite old. So, and, well, you can't just tell yourself to think of this or that. It's already sort of, by the time you get old, it's already kind of programmed into, you know. I don't know if you're aware of culture. And addressed, referred to as, and a female as a girl. But we are not these bodies. These bodies are like vehicles. Everyone came here in a vehicle, we saw, as we came in many vehicles, and I thought, and your mentality is quite different. And your body is quite different to what it was many years ago. This gives us, it's just like a hint, a little insight to the fact that we are eternal identity as an eternal spirit, conscious person.